Merlin Sports.
Hey, how you doing, everyone? This is Merlin Sports. We have a special AFC Preview edition. This is Phenomena here. We have a special
AFC
guest. We have a special guest today. Goes by the
DDawg.
name DDawg. Thanks for joining us. Lifelong football fan like myself.
How's it going, man? Football season started, brother.
Yeah, yeah. We're on the cusp.
Yeah.
So
Well, no. Football season started yesterday, man. College football, man.
yeah,
College football is the prelude into the NFL.
yeah, that's true. The true week 1 started yesterday. So
Yeah. So it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. I'm looking forward to the football season. I mean, always exciting.
Yeah, me too. So let's dive right into it. But then let's look at the AFC. So we just roll through the divisions here, and I guess we start. I think is the division that got the most hype this year is the AFC East, and I think we all know why because Aaron Rodgers has defected to the Jets. So I
Yeah.
know that's the biggest hype. That's the biggest hype this year, this off season is Rodgers and the Jets. So like and I mean they added Dalvin Cook um, just about a week and a half ago. So like what do you think is going to happen in AFC East?
Well, I mean, obviously, you got to look at the defending champions, the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, still around. I mean, those guys are a potent team. Josh Allen has demonstrated that he's one of the best quarterbacks in football right now. But I think it's like a three-team race. Myself, obviously the Bills would be the favorite, but Miami, depending on how Tua can play and keep himself from being injured, he's an injury risk. And the Jets. The Patriots have had 20 years of dominance, but it's over without Brady. They haven't been able to replace the quarterback. I'm not convinced on Matt Jones, and so I like the Bills. But if Rodgers can refine his form with the new team, maybe like Brett Favre did many years ago, they have a good chance. Dalvin Cook is one of the best running backs in the NFL, so I like the Bills, but obviously, I think the Jets are gonna be a team that's gonna be a force to be reckoned with in that division.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the Jets last year, they were competitive, especially early in the season, and I mean, they ended the year with Mike White as quarterback. If they just had a quarterback last year, they for sure would have made the playoffs and probably would have pushed the Bills for the division lead. So the thing with Rodgers though is last year was an off year by his standards. So is that a sign of things to come, or is that just a blip in his resume? Because like we're seeing from even preseason, the Jets, as good as their defense is, and lots of pieces on offense, the offensive line looks to be a bit shaky, and so.
Yeah, I mean the key for the Jets. I mean, yes, of course they did have a quarterback last year, and they tried many different things, and they gave up on Sam Darnold a few years ago. So the problem with Rodgers is he's pushing 40, right? He's going to be 40 in December, and you get older. I mean, not everybody's Tom Brady, right? Like Tom Brady was a phenomenon. He took care of his body. He's not a guy that moved around a lot. Aaron Rodgers is a guy that a lot of his game was his movement in the pocket and being able to get out a little bit and make plays on the run with his legs. He doesn't have that anymore. I mean, he's not. I'm not going to say he was like a Randall Cunningham, even a Cam Newton in his prime. Much more accurate in terms of the throwing the football compared to Cam Newton. But he did move around in the pocket and bought time with his legs. And at 40 years old, he doesn't have that anymore. So it's a matter of can he stay healthy enough for the Jets. They have a great defense. There's no question about their defense, and they got some weapons on offense. So Garrett Wilson was a really good draft pick last year. He's an Ohio State guy. and Ohio State's pushed out receivers. These guys, they replace receivers constantly. They have some great receivers. So he is going to be a really, really good, going to a really good team with some talent at the skill positions and on defense. But he's 40 years old. And
Yeah.
can he handle the rigors, right?
The thing that's interesting to me is that, Rodgers has kind of gotten distracted by off-field in recent years. So I wonder how if the Jets, string together one couple of losses in a row, how is he going to respond with the New York media? Because like that, New York media can eat you alive. And how he had a bit of friction, especially during the COVID season. There's a bit of friction he had with the media in Green Bay, who, are very, how should we say, like hometown friendly media. Now he's going to New York. If they string together a couple of defeats in a row, especially if they end up losing to a team that is beneath their level of play, I just like, I wonder how that's going to play out. I think that's a bit of a wild card.
He's been around. He's been in the spotlight. So I don't think I'll bother that. I think for him in Green Bay, the biggest problem he had was Jordan Love was the guy they drafted to be the guy, and like Brett Favre before him, when they drafted Rodgers, Favre at the end of his career in Green Bay had a lot of tension too, and I'm seeing the same thing with the two of them, right? It's a very similar type of thing. Is eventually they pushed Favre out because they wanted to put Rodgers in, and I think for the last few years they've been trying to push out Aaron Rodgers, but you can't push your star, you can't push the guy who's been the cornerstone of your franchise and won you a Super Bowl out the door just as simple as that, right?
Right.
I mean, so I think that's the thing at play with Rodgers in the media last few years. He wanted to go out on his own terms, kind of like Brady wanted to go to his own terms. I look back at last year. I don't really think Brady wanted to retire. But I think what happened is the media kind of suggested to him that he was going to retire. They kind of were going to scoop him. So he jumped ahead of it and then he backed off of it, right? So Rodgers is a little different in that way. I think he is committed to playing. One of the things about playing football, it's like any sport that you're at the top of the level, like the top level. If you're not committed to doing it, you're going to really pay a price. It's not an easy thing to do. And that's, I think, what Brady struggled with last year. Rodgers is committed to doing this season. I'm not sure he's committed to doing long-term beyond this season. And that's going to be the key is how he does this year will determine whether he's coming back another year. This might be his last year.
Right.
But he doesn't want to go. He doesn't like what happened in Green Bay, and he's got something to prove. That's how I look at it. He's got something to prove.
So we spent a lot of time on the Jets because I think that's where a lot of the focus is on AFC East. But who now that we've dissected the Jets, who do you like coming out of the AFC East?
I still think the Bills are the best team. They're the team that is the most consistent. They've been around. They've knocked at the door. I don't think they're the best team in the AFC, but I think they're the best team in the AFC East. Right? I think there's about 4 or 5 teams a tier below the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you like the Bills coming out of the East. I also like Bills coming out of AFC East, and I think Miami and the Jets would probably be fighting for that second position, and I'd favor Miami if Tua stays healthy all year because I really like the weapons that Miami has, especially on offense. Are very dynamic, and I think what's often overlooked is that just similar to how Buffalo's home field, when you get down the stretch in November, December, and even January, like their home field is very dominant because of the cold and the wind and the snow. But Miami, it's September and October, that humid that humid weather, like that's an underrated home field advantage. Miami has it early in the season, and Buffalo has it late. But
No, that's definitely.
yeah, okay. So we both like Buffalo coming out of the AFC East. Let's turn our attention to the AFC North. I'm just going to run through the teams. This is a very difficult division as well. So we have Cincinnati Bengals, who won the division last year. Baltimore Ravens, who took the wild card and finished second place. Pittsburgh Steelers were third in the division last year, and then the Cleveland Browns finished fourth. So, what to make of the AFC North this year?
I think it's the last man standing in this division. It's going to be a dogfight to see who gets in the playoffs who wins the division. I'm going to lean surprisingly. I'm going to kind of take the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers. If Kenny Pickett can continue to develop and build their offense, Steelers always have a solid defense. And they've made some good additions on their defense. Joey Porter Jr., he's going to fall in the footsteps of his father, although he's a cornerback, not a linebacker like his father was. But, Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches. I mean, they have two of the best coaches in the NFL in that division, Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. And I'm not sold on whether Cincinnati can handle now that they're starting to have to pay their guys. You saw some rumblings with Joe Mixon in his contracts and stuff like that. And Joe Burrow is a fantastic quarterback, but I'm not sure. I mean, the pressure is going to be on them to kind of repeat and win. They snuck up on a lot of people the year before and really battled to get very far in the playoffs. And last year, of course, obviously, they ended up losing to Kansas City. And they have a good record against Kansas City. So they're one of the few teams who've actually handled Kansas City pretty well. But that division is such a power hard division. I joke all the time. When I look at the team who plays Pittsburgh, who plays Baltimore and Pittsburgh the week after. So when you play Baltimore and Pittsburgh the next week, I automatically put them as a loss because those two are two of the most physical teams in football. Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh, they like physical football, and Pittsburgh has some decent weapons. And it's based on Kenny Pickett. I mean, last year I think they were 8-8, if I'm not mistaken. And Mike Tomlin to 8-8 when he lost the starting quarterback, he didn't have one. He did it by committee, and none of them were very good. And Kenny Pickett's in his second year now. For a rookie quarterback, it's hard, but in your second year now, you can start to kind of have a little bit more comfortable. You adjusted to the speed of the NFL. It's a little different than college. And so if they can get solid play at the quarterback position and their offense looks at least remotely good in terms of they can average 24 points a game, stuff like that, Pittsburgh is a team that could come out of that division just because I think Mike Tomlin's one of the best coaches and he doesn't get enough credit for it.
Mm-hmm. No, they were actually 9-8 last year because that 17.
Oh, the 17.
Yeah,
games.
the 17 games. So
he's never had a losing record.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think that's a gutsy pick. Definitely Pittsburgh coming out of that division, and I agree with the coaching, and Pittsburgh is always a tough opponent to play. So there's no easy game against Pittsburgh, but I like Baltimore taking that division, and I'll tell you a couple of reasons why. But of course, it is dependent on Lamar Jackson's health. But now that the contract situation is out of the way, they've added some weapons for him on depth at wide receiver. So you got Odell Beckham Jr. coming in, and you have Nelson Aguilar coming in. So they kind of he's got more weapons. Mark Andrews is tight end. They got a couple of good running backs that were injured the year before. So I think they're coming in fresh now. And I think what's most important is that they changed over the offensive coordinator, and the previous offensive coordinator, he loved to run the ball and make Lamar develop plays around Lamar always running the ball. I think that they might go for a more balanced attack this year because they gotta they can't they gotta minimize the risk that they're exposing Lamar to. So if they adjust their offense because Lamar can throw. I think that's underrated. It's just because he's such a great runner that we think of him as a running quarterback. But the guy can throw, and I think we're going to see more of that this year. And the rest of their team I think is pretty balanced with they always have a good competitive defense, and like you said, Harbaugh is one of the best coaches, and I think they have the best kicker in the game too, Justin Tucker. So they got the intangibles, and I think Baltimore is going to take it. And I'm not sure Joe Burrow. I think he returned to practice, but he was nursing an injury. I don't think he played any of the preseason. And if you recall from last year, Cincinnati started slow in September. They didn't have a good September. I know because I think I chose them in my survivor pool, and they cost me early in September. So I think Baltimore, as long as Lamar stays healthy, I think Baltimore's coming out of that, and Cincinnati and Cleveland are going to fight it out for second. Because I think Deshaun Watson having a full year with training camp, and I think Cleveland going to give a run for second in that division. And Cleveland's kind of a throwback team because they're kind of based on the run. Like you don't see too many teams physical running game. The game's kind of changed in the last few years, and that the quarterbacks are. You kind of have to have the dual threat quarterback, and running backs have kind of their value has diminished a bit. But I think Cleveland's a bit of a throwback in that they just can run the ball down your throat.
No, you're definitely right. I mean, Cleveland is a physical. This whole division is physical, right? The Harbaugh family trait is running the football. They love to run the football. His brother in college at Michigan. They run the football, right? So it's a Harbaugh family trait. I mean, it comes from their father down. He was a coach. But I'm just questioning about Lamar. I mean, he's a great athlete. He's a tremendous football player. I was amazed watching him play at Louisville in college. He can make things happen like you don't expect. But you're right. I mean, the concern is his injury. I know the contract situation was bothersome last year. But I don't know how much, and I don't think I think he's frustrated with how much they don't appreciate him as a player, even though they paid him eventually. So it's a matter of that. He can't take too many hits. Tyler Huntley is not really the best backup. He's okay, but he's not great. But Dobbins is a tremendous running back. How much wear does Odell Beckham have left? Like how much threads on his tires does he still have left?
That's true. But I look at last year, right? Like Lamar got put out for the season. So they gave Cincinnati everything they can handle with Huntley as quarterback in the playoffs. And in fact, how matchups styles make fights, as we say in boxing, but. For some reason, Baltimore is a bad matchup for Cincinnati. Cincinnati struggles against Baltimore. Their style just kind of stifles Cincinnati, and if they didn't cough up a big fumble in that wild card game, Baltimore could have easily upset Cincinnati last year. So you if you have a healthy Lamar at the helm. With additional weapons on offense, I think that's the difference right there. That's why I'm picking Baltimore. But
there's no doubt about it that Cincinnati, since like this division is going to be a bloodbath. I'm not. I by no means think this division is like top heavy or bottom right and bottom light. it is a very, very difficult division. Any one of the four teams in the division can win.
Yeah,
Right?
I agree. Yeah,
Any one of the four teams can win it. So it's never a bad pick. Um, Cincinnati, they still have the Burrow Chase weaponry. They're always going to be tough that way. But I think for Cincinnati, the big thing for them is going to be as they're now getting into non-rookie contracts. They're not a young. Their teams are getting a little bit older, a little bit more experienced. How does that change? Because when you're successful, you got to pay people, right? And that's one thing that I'll say that New England did very well over their course of their dominance is they knew when to make the move on getting rid of players and bringing guys in, and that's a challenge for any football team. There's got to be enough turnover to win football games. So, but like I said, you could pick any one of those four teams, and any one of them to win it. It just depends on how it is. Not as much as, and I agree with you that Cleveland has a really good running game. They got two really good running backs. The problem. How much does a couple years off for Deshaun Watson as a football player? Right?
Yeah. Well, I think you saw last year. Like he was terrible when they put him in, and the suspension that he was on, like he couldn't even practice with the team. He couldn't be around the team, and that's what you saw. But him.
But he hasn't played. He hadn't played in a year and 11 games, right? So the previous year was in Houston. He was on the unable to perform.
Yeah.
They put him aside. They suspended him. He wasn't able to play.
Sure,
so he hasn't played that year, and then he came back last year late in the season. So yes, we'll see how he performs coming in as a full training camp. Does he get back his sharpness, or he just doesn't have it anymore? Right?
Yeah.
It's so hard when you haven't played competitive football and any kind of sport, but football is not a sport you can kind of walk away from and stuff. You can study as much as you want, but you can't replicate speed in practice. Even in preseason, the speed of an NFL game is totally different. So it's going to be interesting to see, how he performs coming out, after a full training camp. But like I said, this division is up for grabs, and so I picked the wild card because I think, like I said, if Kenny Pickett can play as well as he did in preseason and look better and get more comfortable. He's now more comfortable with the speed of the game. Pittsburgh's going to be a pretty dangerous team, but Baltimore is a good pick as well. I'm not gonna question on that.
Yeah,
right. It's all about who can stay healthy too, because football is a physical game. So, and this division is all about this division is a bloodbath because all four teams want to run the football. All four teams want to run the football, and they got good running backs.
And run it.
Pittsburgh's got Najee Harris. Cincinnati's got Joe Mixon. Baltimore's got J.K. Dobbins, and Cleveland's got a two-headed monster. So Nick Chubb is a fabulous running back. So, it's going to be interesting, but and I wouldn't be surprised if you see two wild card teams come out of this on top of the division one.
Yeah, it's very possible. Yeah, they could very well have one. Okay, well, why don't we move on? Why don't we take a trip south and look at the AFC South? And I think you'll agree with me with the assessment that this is the weakest division in AFC. We have last year's division winner, Jacksonville Jaguars, with a 9-8 record, and we have Tennessee Titans, Indianapolis Colts, and Houston Texans. So tell me who you like coming out of this division.
I think by default coming out of this division is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. And not saying they're a bad football team, because Trevor Lawrence came into his own. I think you saw his rookie year. Travis Etienne is a very good running back from Clemson. They have chemistry. Travis Etienne and Trevor Lawrence. And Trevor Lawrence had a very solid year last year. I would not put it past them to win it again. And I think they'll have a much better record than they had last year. But this is by far the weakest division. You got two rookie quarterbacks starting for Indianapolis and Houston. I will say that as much as and I'll throw it in the podcast, I'm a Michigan fan. I love Michigan. But C.J. Stroud, even though he was 0-2 against Michigan, he is a fabulous quarterback. He can make throws, put it right on the money, dime. His offense at Ohio State suited him. He had great receivers. but he's going to Houston, and this is a young football team. How good they are, I think they're not going to be very good. So he's going to struggle. I hope it doesn't beat him up about it. But he's going to be a really good quarterback in the NFL in a few years. Uh, he will change the Ohio State narrative of quarterbacks going to the NFL and not doing well. But we'll see how that goes. And then Indianapolis has Anthony Richardson, and I'm telling you, in terms of raw ability and talent, he's got the size and speed and arm strength of a Cam Newton, but he only played 13 games in college. I was shocked that he got drafted so high. I was shocked that they even talked about him being a first round pick because he's so raw, and when you're raw, getting thrown to the wolves in the NFL, it's not a good thing.
And
you want to develop under somebody and learn how to play the game. And even the greatest Tom Brady had Drew Bledsoe for a year, right? To learn under him and understand the competitive edge and what it takes to be a professional.
Yeah, I mean they're giving him the keys to the car right straight away. And what's even more shocking is when you have a young quarterback coming in like that. I mean, you owe it to the guy to insulate the guy or at least surround him with some talent. And so it's really shocking that Jonathan Taylor looks like he's requested a trade. He's held out, and I think he's starting the season on the PUP list, the physically unable to perform list. So, I mean, talk about removing what would have been a security blanket for a raw quarterback like him. He's not going to be able to hand off to 2 years removed from the rushing title. So that's a shock.
I'll say this. You said it earlier about the game changing, and the piece of that is you see this offseason that all the running backs were fighting to get more, right? The Giants didn't want to pay Saquon Barkley, who, regardless, I don't want to compare him to anybody. It's hard to compare different eras and stuff like that. But for the Giants, he's like Herschel Walker was for the Dallas Cowboys back in the day, right? He's a lot of their offense. He's very versatile. He's got great skills, and we'll talk about him later on. But they don't want to pay him, the Giants, and the Colts don't want to pay Jonathan Taylor, and so the running backs are taking a beating in the off season, trying to get more money, but they're not getting it, right. So that's going to be the challenge moving forward. It would be nice to have Jonathan Taylor there to help out Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to struggle a lot early. That's why, and Jacksonville, I think when you win and you learn to win, and that's what they needed with Urban Meyer. I always knew that Urban Meyer was as an NFL coach, great college coach, not an NFL coach. There's certain traits to being an NFL coach, and it's hard to be a great college coach and a great NFL coach. There's only a few guys that have done it. So a year removed from Urban Meyer, now they've won last year. They learned how to win a little bit. They're going to be better prepared this year to win. And I don't see anybody else. I mean, Tennessee, I think Willis is their starting quarterback now, if I'm not mistaken. So they've went away from Tannehill to Willis, and other than the fact that they have Derrick Henry, who I think is the best running back in the NFL, and he's a workhorse. I don't think that they have enough to compete with Jacksonville. And that's why Jacksonville running away, because the rest of the division is not very good.
Yeah, well, I'm in Jacksonville. Will have 2 games each against those two weaker opponents. So. I too like Jacksonville coming out. Some of the same reasons you stated. I mean, one year more experience for Trevor Lawrence and the weapons that you mentioned, and then also Christian Kirk on a very good wide receiver, and he's developed some chemistry with Trevor Lawrence. And I think just tack on that 1 year experience, one more year of experience to a very young team, and the lack of competition in that division. And I too like Jacksonville coming out, and I think Tennessee, they've done good in the division last few years, except for last year. But we might start to see some wear and tear on Derrick Henry because it is an absolute wonder that he's been able to sustain such good health with his running style because he's a downhill runner. He's an old school running back, just trying to run the ball down your throat. And if you see the shelf life of running backs, I mean, it's like it's probably average around 5 years, and then running backs they're out, and it's part of the reason why they don't want to pay them because they know that they're one play away from ending their career. So why would they want to pay? They would just go and get one in the draft, put them on a rookie contract. It would be just as effective as a 4 or 5 year guy that has already been hobbled by injuries. So Derrick Henry is actually, I'm amazed that he's been able to sustain the health, but it's got to start to catch up with him sooner or later. And I think we might start to see the slide ever so gradually. So yeah, I like Jacksonville coming out.
Yeah, he's a beast. And I should add in that Calvin Ridley's back after a year suspension for Jacksonville, so he had some depth at receiver as well.
Yeah,
which will help Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence, I mean, if you haven't watched him in college, you don't appreciate the kind of player he is. He's got a great attitude for a quarterback. He's a gunslinger, but he just has so much confidence in himself. And in the NFL, you're going to have to, you forget the mistakes you make, and you have to play through them. And he's with his attitude, he can play through them.
Yeah,
it's gonna be it'll be interesting.
He just has the tools, and I'm glad he bounced back because that Urban Meyer season could have been a disaster for his career, but he was able to turn it around because we've seen so many young quarterbacks just, they get humbled during that first year, and there are some that are never able to recover. It's like a graveyard of former stars, and we're talking stars in college that just come and they just get humbled, and then they just go through the ringer, like from team to team to team, and then we're gonna touch a few of them as we cycle through these teams here. But I was kind of rooting for Trevor Lawrence because when you watch him in college, the guy's got the tools, so there was no way he was going to be a bust, and I'm glad that he kind of put everything together last year. Yeah, I was rooting for him. I'm not a Jaguars fan, but I was just rooting for him because I knew he was too good for that Urban Meyer season to define him. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't we go to out west, AFC West? This is a very interesting division. So we have the defending Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs, who took that division and the number one seed last year in AFC. We have the Los Angeles Chargers, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Denver Broncos, who finished last in that division. So I guess we have to start with the cream of the crop, the Chiefs. What's your thoughts on the Chiefs this year?
Well, I mean, as long as you got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, you're going to be a team that's going to have to be reckoned with. I still think they're the best team in the AFC. There's no reason. I mean, I know they have a holdout with Jones, but otherwise, I think that they're still the best team in the AFC. And Andy Reid is one of the better coaches. I know every coach runs out of his shelf life, but Andy Reid's shelf life is still has a shelf life here, and as long as he's got Patrick Mahomes, and as long as Mahomes can stay healthy, they're going to be a very good football team again. I mean, Mahomes he just makes plays. He just knows how to play, and he knows how to make plays, and he knows how to extend plays, and he's got improvisation. He's the complete package for a quarterback. He's the guy that you said it's wide open. They changed the game of being a quarterback. Well, Patrick Mahomes is the guy that sort of the guys everybody kind of wants. That guy who can make that improvised play. He can get out of the pocket a little bit. He doesn't run he's not a running quarterback, but he knows how to buy time, make plays, and he throws Um, he'll surprise you with a throw that you don't see from anybody else, right? Whether it's a sidearm throw, whether it's a little flip, whether it's an underhanded throw. He just knows how to do it. Um, the athlete is in his blood because his father was a major league player in Major League Baseball. So I don't see anybody beating them. Um, the Raiders and Chargers are probably sitting there second and third. I like the Chargers a little bit. Justin Herbert, he came in and he's been on fire ever since his rookie season, and I don't see that stopping. And the Raiders, we'll see. They got Jimmy G now as their starting quarterback. They gave up on Derek Carr, went to Jimmy G. I don't know how good he's going to be there. The other problem with Jimmy G is he's never been able to stay healthy. So if he can't stay healthy, it's not helping the Raiders. And so that's going to be tough for them. So I like KC. Then I like the Chargers. And then the Raiders and the Broncos are going to battle out, I think, for third and fourth. I think people are understanding the Broncos. They really have given up on Russell Wilson. I'm not 100% sure it's all Russell Wilson, his demise. And he's got a really good football coach in Sean Payton. I've always been a big fan of Sean Payton as a football coach. He did wonders for Drew Brees. Can he still squeeze out the last amount of juice in Russell Wilson? We'll see. But I don't see any one of those two. I think maybe the Chargers can challenge KC, but I like KC. I like KC coming out of the AFC again this year, trying to defend their Super Bowl title. Actually, we'll jump ahead a little bit.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think KC's the cream of the crop of that division. I see the Chargers as second best, so we're kind of in agreement here. I don't know if the Chargers have enough to push KC for the division title. KC they're so well coached, and anytime you count them out, they just know how to win. Andy Reid got them operating like a fine old machine, and so I hope that holdout on defense. He'll probably end up signing. I think I saw on the weekend Travis Kelce making an emotional appeal for him to come, to end his holdout. And Charter should be good. Justin Herbert is good. He's got some good weapons on offense, and I am interested with the Raiders. Jimmy G, if he can stay healthy. I mean, he's statistically, he's not a outstanding quarterback, but it just seems like he knows how to win. He's got some kind of intangible. And Denver is interesting because I think we will find out. Is Russell Wilson was last year just a blip in the radar, or is he really on the decline? And you're going to find out this year because Sean Payton is a great coach, and great for quarterbacks, as you mentioned, the job he did with Drew Brees, and I think that Buddy Hackett was a terrible coach for him last year. So
Nathaniel Hackett.
Nathaniel Hackett. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that you can't discount the fact Hackett was a terrible coach. I mean, some people said that, it has to do with it has to do with Wilson, his decline. But Hackett never called plays before, and it's one thing to jump from being a guy who didn't call plays as an offensive coordinator to being the head coach of an NFL team, right?
Well,
It's look at the fact that Casey, Bieniemy's left KC to go work for Washington because of the fact that they felt that Andy Reid was doing all the offensive coordinating, right? And he wasn't really the offensive coordinator, so he never got a shot. Even though I think he's going to be a hell of a football coach, they weren't giving him a shot, so he decided he had to go to Washington, right? So they don't lose anything, Casey, by him leaving because Andy Reid was very much involved in the offense. But having that with a guy that was the head coach who never called plays, becoming a head coach is going to be very hard. And Russell Wilson coming for a new offense. So he's now a second year in Denver. I don't think he's dead yet, but we'll see if Pete Carroll was correct in his assessment to give up on Russell Wilson. Right, that's a big contract that Denver signed with Russell Wilson, and that's a lot of investment they made because they give a lot of draft picks. So it has to work for them, and that's why I think why they brought in Sean Payton. They actually tried to get Jim Harbaugh, and he told them no. I think large part because I think Jim Harbaugh likes his team at Michigan, but they wanted him at first, and then Sean Payton was the guy that came up. Either one would be really good as coaches, but Sean Payton is a fantastic football coach, and he will be able to help Russell Wilson. If Russell Wilson can't have a good season with Sean Payton, he's pretty much done, as you said.
And circle your calendars for October the 8th when Denver plays the New York Jets, because Peyton called for whatever reason called out Nathaniel Hackett, saying that it wasn't all Wilson's fault last year. It was the worst coaching that he ever seen, or something to that effect. And it's kind of rare for head coaches to criticize another head coach. It's kind of not done in the coaching fraternity. So that definitely ruffled some feathers. So I'm looking at the schedule here, and the Jets are in Denver on October the 8th. So that is an interesting side story to
Absolutely.
Denver. Yeah.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. It's going to be exciting. It's funny that he did call him out. Good bulletin board material. So we'll see who has the last laugh after that game.
Okay, so moving along here, so you've kind of identified your 4 division winners. So you had Buffalo in the AFC East, Pittsburgh in the AFC North, Jacksonville in the South, and Kansas City in the West. So who do you like for wild cards? And then ultimately, who do you think is your pick to come out of the AFC?
So for wild cards, I'm going to go back to the Central, where Baltimore and that's the Central, right, or the North?
The North.
That's the North. Okay, my mistake. So the North, I'm going to go back there, and I'm going to say whoever doesn't win the division, either. I'll take Baltimore coming out as a wild card coming out of that division. And I'm going to take the Los Angeles Chargers. I keep calling them San Diego from years back, but the Los Angeles Chargers. And I'm going to take the Jets coming out of the East. So you'll have 3 different wild cards from 3 different divisions. It's possible you might get a second wild card out of the North, but I'm going to stick with one team out of each of those divisions. Obviously, we discussed the South is garbage. So they're not going to get another team coming out of that division, unlike Tennessee previously. So that's how I see them. And ultimately coming out, I will take Kansas City again to come out of the AFC. They have all the experience. They know how to win. And as the Nature Boy Ric Flair will say, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I don't see anybody beating them just yet.
Mm-hmm. No, I mean that's a pretty solid rationale there, and I think Kansas City. If you're going to beat them, you got to beat them on the road. So they can't have home field advantage through the AFC playoffs. I think that's likely to make the path to the Super Bowl that much easier for them. So I'm gonna go through my picks here. So yeah, I do have Buffalo coming out of AFC East, Baltimore coming out of the North, Jacksonville in the South, Kansas City in the West, and then for wild cards, I think I'm going to go, actually, maybe a bit of surprise. I'm going to call Miami and the New York Jets wild cards coming out of AFC East. And I'm going to double up in the North, too, and say Cincinnati and Cleveland coming out as wild cards in AFC North. And so no wild cards coming from the South or the West, which might be a bit of a surprise. And I'm going to call Baltimore coming out of the AFC. And of course, the asterisk here is the health of Lamar Jackson. But I think if they stay healthy and they rack up a good record and clinch home field advantage, I think that they have a very good shot of coming out of AFC. And I would say that maybe a dark horse would be. I like Miami as a dark horse, and again, I probably my picks are probably two of the more riskiest quarterbacks in the AFC injury wise. But if if those risks end up coming through, then I think just Miami. The talent on Miami is very good, and they pushed the Bills to the limit, and they had a shot at winning in Buffalo too, which is very difficult in winter months. So I don't know. Why has this got a feeling if they stay healthy that they got a shot to make some noise? But I'm going with Baltimore as my top pick to come out of AFC.
That's a gutsy pick, man. That's a gutsy pick. Definitely, though. I mean, Lamar is a great quarterback, and he can make things happen, just like Patrick Mahomes. So it's a big if with his health, though. You don't want to. You can't get beat up too much, right? So he's got to run less. He's got to learn to run less. So, but a gutsy pick, interesting pick. Same thing with Miami. Tua is a lot more of an asterisk than Lamar is. Lamar has shown that he can stay pretty healthy, but Tua, he's had injuries throughout his career, even in college. He was injury prone, so that's going to be tough for him to stay on the field as much as he is. He had surgery on his back before he ever got drafted from college, so he's a little bit more iffy. But Miami does have weapons, and they can surprise. I've always felt that Buffalo has given Kansas City a run, and they always feel slighted at the end. But I don't see them coming out and being a challenge for any one of the teams that come out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'd like to thank you for your time today, breaking it down. I think the analysis was great. I look forward to breaking down the NFC in our next episode. So thanks a lot, DDawg.
No worries. No worries, my friend.
Let's get the season going.
Absolutely.
Merlin Sports.